What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Squanch, Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. I'm Michael Burns, joined as always by the Squanchers. We got the Lord of all things Squanch, Ryan Haley. What's up, Ryan?
Wubba lubba, it's a sad day. It's the end of the season. Wubba lubba howdy, everybody. Let's talk about it.
And we have special guest returning, the Squanchy Thunder from Down Under, Austin Hayden. I feel like that's the name I'm supposed to use. I just corrected myself part of the way through saying it. Austin, how are you?
I'm chilling. Good day, mate.
Wow, that was good. So we have more than usual to talk about because we are talking about the two-part Season 5 finale, episodes 9 and 10, Forgetting Sarek Morchel and Rick Marai Jack. It was a lot. I think we could all agree that it was just a lot overall. I'm very curious to hear.
I wanted more.
Oh, okay. So I think that's a good sign because normally you don't want more of something if it sucks. Well, let's start with this then. Let me ask you this, Austin. The last time we talked, you had just been diving into the Rick and Morty universe. I know now you've been watching all season. I think you went back and caught up on old seasons and stuff. Where are you at now in your journey with this show? As someone who has a real smart brain and is good at analyzing culture with it, has the show lived up to expectations? Are you enjoying your journey into the Smith/Sanchez family multiversal universe? Like, what's it been like?
It's fucking rad, and I don't know if it's always this case or if it's just the platform that I'm watching it on, but I also get like these little 2 to 3 minute commentaries from the creators and the writers and stuff like that I can watch. Is that like if you're watching it just on Adult Swim, does everyone get that, or is that just if you're streaming it on like Hulu or something like that?
I do not get that. I have seen one of those that you're talking about. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Do they do this for every episode? And apparently they do.
Yeah, every
episode.
Season, yeah. It's so great because you really get to see, one, their creative process for what they wanted it to look like, but more than anything, you start to get into the minds of something. And someone said something, and I don't remember who it was. It wasn't Harmon, and it wasn't Justin Roiland. It was one of the other producers or writers, and he said something like, Morty is a young Zoomer growing up in late stage capitalism. And he said that, and I was like, I'm really glad he said that, because I was thinking about the Citadel, and I was thinking about, and obviously, I mean, it's pretty on the nose. They're like, oh, I would have thought the critique of capitalism would have been a little bit less on the nose or something like that, a couple of times those lines. But I was thinking a lot about kind of the impact on broader culture itself, about how it shapes who we are, how it shapes our emotions, how it shapes our relations, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking about that a lot as I was watching the season. And obviously the last episode that I was on was the one where it was like the Captain Planet-ish one.
Planetina, yeah.
Planetina one, yeah. And so it was talking about a lot of like the existential crisis of climate breakdown that's facing us. And I think what I love more than anything, I was thinking this as I was like walking back to the office to record. There's something about like the tone of the show that I don't think gets enough love. We talk about the content and the smarts and all these other things, but there's something really lovely about the tone. You have kind of like sincerity versus just this nihilistic cynicism. And even one of the weapons in the episode, or in this latest season when they're killing the demons, is like true sincerity. And that's what causes pain, but not a pain that feels good, but a pain that's actually painful because it feels good, So it's like, I think that there's something really lovely about kind of exploring this, almost this division. Like, how the fuck can we be happy in a world that is constantly impressing itself with all of these pressures and social anxieties and things like that? So, yeah.
Well, it's good to know. And I think one of the most fun things about this season of the Squanch has been having some new friends on, people that have gotten into the show more recently. And it's really good to see all these fresh takes on it. I love it, and I appreciate it. But let's just get right into it. I need to know this. I've been thinking this since I first saw the episode. Ryan Haley, what are your initial reactions? And you can either grade both of them together, or you can consider them two completely separate pieces of work and give individual grades to the individual episodes. Whatever you do, we will also do after you. You have the responsibility to set a precedent right now. No pressure.
All right, so I'm going to talk. I will give them each a grade individually, but I'm going to talk about it overall in terms of because they are kind of joined in a way. It was a big lore drop episode, which I think I kind of called in one of our previous episodes. I think I said they were going to go in this very Rick-centered lore direction.
I think you did.
So I nailed it 100% as always. And I'm very conflicted on what we got. I think that I liked what we got. Overall, when it ended, especially with evil Morty breaking through the infinity curve or whatever the fuck, I was like, this is like a cool This is like an actual legit sci-fi show episode right now. I like the animation. I like how they did it. I like how the montages with no music, or the montages with no dialogue, and kind of I hope we break it down exactly what the story was and all of that. Probably we'll get to it in your recap. But on one hand I liked it. On the other hand, I kind of echoing my criticisms throughout this whole podcast this season. It wasn't hilarious. I did not laugh a ton, which to me, big kind of strike right there. And it was one of those episodes where it was so dense in its concepts and lore and what it was saying. And sometimes they do an episode like that and it's like really funny too, and it has a momentum and it works. But I think that also this is one where you kind of had to really be following along, had to really be invested in the characters, had to really be know Rick and Morty through and through to get the most out of this episode, which I've said before is not the sign of a best episode of Rick and Morty. The best ones are the ones you can just show a friend and, who's never seen the episode and it just fucking rocks and slays them and you want more afterwards. But hey, this is the finale, so they had to give us a little something to chew on. And I liked how they made fun of it throughout the episode, how they were like, hey, are you sure we want to go to the Citadel? That whole place runs on canon. Don't we want to just have fun? And so almost this whole conflict of what I'm saying was a part of the episode, which is something I like, which is like, are we going to do you really want to know the backstory of Rick? Which I think is a really interesting question we should talk about, is do we want to know, did we force their hand? Do we force them to give us this? And are we satisfied? And is that part of what they're asking? Is that the theme? Is it like, do you want to know what your heroes or not even, or your anti-heroes? I like that moment where they're like, he's an anti-hero. Does that make it better? So part of I feel like this season and especially this finale is a commentary on just storytelling itself and just what's more entertaining. And then also I like the fact that it seems like they're setting us up for a new a next season of just episodic fun as opposed to
because the Citadel's destroyed
stuff. Yeah, right? The Citadel's gone.
Destroyed. Yeah, so if that's gone, then what
does
that do for like the infinite loops and shit like that? Like, did those things, like access to those things, go away too? Were they all destroyed? Like, so what is that?
Yeah, I want to get into all this, but first I need some letter grades.
Oh, I'm sorry, I fucked up. Okay, so yes, letter grades. I'm gonna go the second to last episode. I'm gonna go kind of on C+. Like it was not my favorite. The one where Morty had the portal in his hand. But then the last episode I liked more, and I'm gonna give it a B to B. I'm gonna give it a B+.
Okay, strong. That's great. All right. And yes, so much stuff that just came up. We are going to spend some time breaking down. I can't wait to talk about it. Austin.
Yeah, I want to talk about the wife thing too. We should bring up obviously we're gonna get into the wife thing, but I want to bring up about why that was. From the season 3 opening, it was basically the same thing, which we thought was a lie, but it wasn't. But then there was more to it. And what does that mean? And what are they telling us? Okay, continue. Sorry to break it up.
No.
Yeah,
I did. Austin, thoughts and then letter grades.
Yeah, I mean, real simply, I didn't love this season. I thought the first few episodes were pretty freaking good, and then I thought the middle episodes were kind of. I don't know. They were all right. There were some fun moments. I chuckled a little bit, here and there. Obviously, there's always humor, but I didn't love them for some reason. And then the final 2 episodes, I felt like they were trying to be like, okay, let's wrap up this whole season as well as a bunch of other stuff from the other seasons, and let's make it this big 2-part finale. And it felt kind of like it came out of nowhere, but also kind of like it was forcing a more of a linear story than maybe like kind of worked. I don't know. No, even though I did enjoy the episodes themselves, I thought the animation was fantastic. I thought the montage of Rick, there was like this moody kind of like techno music where he's like going through kind of like the past and stuff. I thought that was really freaking cool. I really enjoyed that. I I really actually enjoyed the idea of Rick and Two Crows. I'd watch that show. I thought that was really fun. I'm kind of curious. I enjoyed kind of the nod to sort of the anime and other artistic genre. I thought that was kind of fun. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna give the finale a solid B, just at like a solid like execution. But then in terms of like question that it arises, I think A minus, because I really like a lot of the questions that it brings. So I guess that averages out to like a B plus total.
Wow, there you go. So I'll start with grades and then just say a little bit what I thought about it. Episode 9, definitely more of a C for me, maybe a C plus. I think that, yeah, I mean, the Crow stuff was interesting, but I think it took me, I watched both of these like 3 times in the past 24 hours. And in one sense, after 3 viewings, I think I got a lot more what was going on. There were some subtle things I didn't catch. But in another sense, I wish that it didn't take 3 viewings to pick up on some of the smaller things. And I think I agree with what Ryan pointed out. I think because there wasn't a lot of jokes, the storytelling was a lot more dense. So you had to pay much better attention to get everything that was going on, because there wasn't just like breaks for humor. And there, I don't know. So episode 9, give a C minus to that one. It set up some interesting things.
C minus?
C minus. No, okay, I'll say C. I'll solid C. I got yelled at, so I'm doing the other thing. C. I didn't get yelled at. I'm just fragile. Episode 10, I'm gonna go A minus. I really liked it. One of my favorites of the season. Now, I think that I didn't mind as much in that one. That it didn't have as much of the jokes that I like so much, because of the level of storytelling it got to, the meta-ness of what was happening. I think that it tried to tie up some loose ends. And I think, and I want to get more into this once we start breaking stuff down. For me, episode 10 asked some questions not only about like our world and what it means to be a person, but I think it was asking questions about what this show is, what it wants to be, what it might be in the future. And I think it went about it in a way that was self-referential, but not just for the sake of self-reference. I think it was almost like the show thinking about itself. The show gaining self-consciousness and starting to ask itself questions or something like that. So I really like that about 10.
I would say that in retrospect made the rest of the series sadder. Would you disagree?
Yeah. Oh, no, it did. And I think that's the balance, right? The 2 poles of this show I find the most compelling tend to be either when it's just really funny and ridiculous, or when I'm shocked by how much it's making me feel things. And I think episode 10 also had the benefit of, if you stuck around till after the credits, and I want to talk about this more and really get into it, but we saw our friend Mr. Poopy Butthole, and we had a little epilogue that I think put a lot of things into perspective about what maybe the last 2 episodes were trying to get at. I want to get into that later, but for me, it probably took it from a B plus to an A minus for me, the Mr. Poopy Butthole epilogue, because I think it framed a lot of what they were trying to do really interestingly. But let's start with this. I want to hear what everyone thinks about it. I want to go point by point and break stuff down, but I'm going to do a summary, and it's gonna be rough. It's going to be rough. I normally just do 1. I'm going to do 2. I'm going to try to get through it. So if I pass out part of the way through, can someone send over the paramedics to wake me up? So we'll do our recap, and then we'll really break it down. So here we go. Episode 9. We start with Morty on some missions cleaning up Rick's intergalactic messes. He gets back and needs to refuel the portal gun, and he decides to do it with Mountain Dew. However, sticky fingers don't let him put the gun back together well. He spills some of the fluid and gets a portal hole in his hand that has a guy on the other side. Now, Rick is pissed. Morty calls his bluff. They decide to replace Morty as sidekick via his Wheel of Better Things Than Morty, which he just has ready to go. Now, he could have gotten half of a Paul Giamatti, but he lands on 2 crows. Now, Morty then meets up with his portal friend at his home, which is a mental asylum, and breaks them out so they can become, quote, the Portal Boys. Meanwhile, Rick tries to ditch his 2 crows on a bird planet, but ends up getting sucked down to the planet where he hears some vague crow wisdom, learns empathy, and doubles down on his new sidekicks. But the big bad crows find out that Rick only trained these crows as a bit and takes them back to their crow planet. All the while, Morty and Nick get jammed up while trying to get portal fluid. And Morty ends up letting a train cut his hand off to detach from his portal brother. It's fucking gross. Rick then tries to get his crows back. Eventually they save him, maybe because of empathy and maybe because of bird quaaludes. But Rick is excited to have his new sidekicks detached from the toxic relationship he had with Morty. Realizing how abusive their partnership was, Rick leaves Morty, goes off with the crows, and this leads into Rick and Two Crows, episode 10. Now, episode 10 starts with Rick, now called Crowman, who's some sort of Ronin figure who's murdering owls, the eternal enemies of crows. Morty shows up, but Rick bails. Rick is searching for Crow Scare and happens upon a 40-year-old Morty who looks like shit. Rick doesn't want to team back up with him because he says what they had wasn't healthy. But Crow Rick finds out that his two crows are actually playing him to rebound from Crow Scare, with whom they do sex. This sends Rick back to the Smiths, where he finds out Morty used an agent serum to look 40. He's still 14, and they rejoin. The old team is back together. Now, Beth tells Morty that he's worthy of respect and should be treated differently, but Morty doesn't care and just wants to get back with Rick. They have to go to the Citadel, where another Rick sold Morty the agent serum, and we see that Morty is now president of the Citadel. After they split Morty in two to make him 14 again, which also creates a 26-year-old Morty in the process, and his 3 seconds alive have some great 26-year-old specifics. They then have dinner with President Morty, who wants to use a scan of Rick's brain to bring down the central finite curve, which separates infinity from the infinite universes, where Rick is the smartest man in the universe. Now, Morty learns that Mortys are bred by bringing together Beths and Jerrys to supply more Morty labor, and that Rick's weakness and Morty's forgiveness keep them attached. We also learn that President Morty is, of course, evil Morty, and Rick creates a Rick blob, which he calls a metaphor for capitalism, that gains power and pleasure through violence. I'm not quite sure I got it. Now, evil President Morty starts mass slaughtering everyone on the Citadel via a hacked portal supply. Rick and Morty try to escape, but in the underworld beneath the city, they see grotesque Mortys being violently forced into labor. Again, a metaphor for capitalism, as the show says. Morty wants to know why all this is happening, and we take a montage journey into Rick's origin story, starting with the Rick who showed him the portal gun in the first place, who used a bomb to kill his wife and daughter, and going through his decline and rebirth as the man who would grow to become Rick C-137. We then learn that evil President Morty is blowing up the central finite curve so we can leave the universe ruled by Ricks once and for all. And Morty learns that Rick only came back because the crows dumped him. Evil Morty uses the Citadel as a weapon to blow the curve, and Rick and Morty escape via Mortyburg while evil Morty portals into a whole new world. After the credits, we get a coda where Mr. Poopy Butthole shares a story about how isolating yourself from those you love hurts those brave enough to love you, and it can leave you alone, unloved, and afraid to love. That was our season finale. So let's get into it, and I'll start with this. I want to hear what you guys think, but Jeff Loveness, who wrote one of the finale episodes, who used to be full-time on Rick and Morty and went off to do some like lowbrow stuff like write frickin' Marvel movies, said this. Said, came back, this is a tweet he made the night it aired. He said, came back to write the Rick and Morty season finale. Airs tonight. It is about the burning of the world and the lies we tell the people we love because we are afraid. So I want to start with this. Did you all see that? Because when I read that tweet before I saw the episodes, so I had this like expectation in my head and it sounded so deep and emotional. Did you see a finale that was about the burning of the world and the lies we tell the people we love because we are afraid?
What are Rick's lies in this context? Is it the lie of omission of not telling his entire origin story to Morty?
Is it that? Yeah, I was wondering, is it Rick's lies and is it Morty's lies to himself as well? Is it all these lies within the family of no one wanting to be honest about how they feel and what they need?
Because that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's an inability it's an inability to express the true desires of your heart. So what we do then is because we can't face that trauma, or we can't face the depth of vulnerability that opens. So what we do then is we engage in like symptomatic responses, right? And we treat people poorly, or we don't express ourselves in full authenticity. There was this moment where they're talking about like how there's like a lack of responsibility, how like there's no responsibility in this multiverse, right? And that there's something about like I think in very existentialist terms, right? There's like the refusal of the recognition of your condition and your participation in that condition, and therefore you shirk responsibility. And in so doing, that is a self-deception, right?
I think that's what President Morty says to Morty when he's like, I hate you guys more than the Ricks because you think you're good, you think you're doing something right, but you're just enabling the shit, basically.
Well, but in the context of our Rick and Morty, C-137, Rick and Morty, you know, what are the lies that they're telling themselves, other than obviously it reframes what everything Rick's done, because Rick is just essentially, you know, drinking, trying to forget what's his past while he's fucking around because nothing matters, blah blah blah. Morty, on the other, you know, and then I think the most important moment of the show with him as a character is when he's like, look, we had a toxic relationship, and then him having that moment of realization is like, wow, this was just for me, and I'm, you know, this was fucked up what I'm doing. And maybe that's the lie, that he hadn't fully recognized that or admitted that, and, you know, to himself, that his whole relationship with Morty was a lie. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, and rather than just admitting, hey, we have a toxic relationship, therefore I'm going to go off to spite you, like, that would be a sort of symptomatic and inauthentic response to what would be a deeper truth is, fuck, okay, so there's a pathology here. Like, I am cynical because I am running from some sort of initial childhood trauma or some sort of initial trauma or whatever the fuck it is. That would be like a true exploration of the depth of self, of the depth of the actual cause of whatever is causing him to respond the way he is. But he doesn't. So he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to bail because that's easier, right? So that's a lie. And then Morty's lie is kind of like I know that I'm being taken advantage of, but I just need this relationship so much that I don't care if I have like mutual respect or if there's like an actual reciprocal relation here. I just want him back.
Yeah,
right?
Well, it's like having like a shitty friend or being in a shitty relationship where you're aware that you're treated like crap or you're just someone's little like laughing stock, but hell, that's better than being alone.
Exactly.
It makes go around.
I guess to me, there's a difference between lying to yourself, like being in denial about something, and then not telling that your loved ones something, or straight up lying to them for a specific reason. Does that make sense? And which one is that writer talking about?
Yeah. Do you think it's that you're lying so that you don't have to face the depth of the trauma, right? So like in the epilogue, there's that bit where he's saying, this is what we do, this is how we mistreat the people we love, and then he's like, how about we don't, right? And then it's like, what if we were bold, and what if we actually did just come to our loved ones with a true openness? What does that mean? The show doesn't fucking say, obviously, and Mr. Poop Pants doesn't say, but it's kind of like, what if we did just come to them and express?
So here's the question: is this what we want? I'll get a little meta here. Is this what we want Rick and Morty to do? Do we want this show to try to convey, you know, messages about self-love and self-deception and all that?
Yeah, I love when they take a big, you know, a big swing at big themes, and they're, you know, and they try to make it real with this stupid cartoon with fart jokes and stuff wrapped around it. I will, you know, I guess I'm still a little confused about like. Are they talking? Are we to assume that they want Rick, the Rick that we know and love, to have just came fully clean about everything that he's ever done wrong to his entire family, and say that and have Morty admit that we fucked up our old Earth and we came here and you guys, you know, we're not your real family. Just literally be completely transparent. Is that the kind of brutal honesty that the show is pushing for and stuff? Or are they just saying, or is it more an internal don't lie to yourself sort of thing?
I mean, do you think that we're going to get a different Rick in season 6? Like, do you think it's all of a sudden going to be this like intuitive and self-aware and empathic Rick?
No way.
No way.
No. So, well, and this is, I guess we should I'll say this, we should maybe get back to some specifics, start with some stuff from 9 or whatever, but I don't know. There's a reading of this where the writer said, fuck it. You guys want lore, you want backstory, we're going to just dump it all in your face, and now we can get back to having fun, so don't bother us anymore. I mean, there's a world where I think they completely pivot in season 6, and we're just like Rick and Morty forever, having adventures back at it.
I think that's exactly what the conversation they had. They go, all right, we're gonna have this big like lore dump of a finale to just really give you everything you would ever need to know about, a character's motivations with Rick, when it's been pretty mysterious thus far, and then they're gonna kind of turn it around. Although we still don't know the impetus, the Rick who came in and murdered his family. I mean, maybe this will turn into a Dallas situation and or a Twin Peaks, and it'll be all about trying to figure out who that guy was and his motivations.
Maybe the idea is like, oh, hey, you know what we could do is we could be open and we could like really do some like self-exploration, express the depths of our heart, but we're probably not gonna. So let's just kind of like figure out a way to continue the amusement under the current conditions that we have. And then maybe, we get a little bit of insight, but we're probably not. We're just going to keep like kind of engaging with our little pathologies and stuff like that. And so, maybe that's kind of part of it too. So there's kind of like almost like a meta cynicism that the show ends on.
Well, so how about this? I think did we all agree that we think 10 was stronger than 9?
Yes.
Okay. So my read on 10 is that it's related, but 9 is the episode on relationships, on toxic cycles of interpersonal relationships. We get Nick. Get it? It sounds like Rick, but different. Nick and Morty, the Portal Bros. We have Rick and 2 crows. We see, Rick at least acknowledging the toxic dynamic of his relationship with Morty. We see Morty realizing what happens when he just tries to recreate that sense of belonging with someone else. He loses a hand, which I found really, really intense. It was like a mini version of the movie 127 Days, and it just took place in like 4 seconds. That's the movie where James Franco cut his arm off, in case anyone didn't see that. Don't see it. It was
127 hours.
Hours, sorry. Yeah, my bad.
That'd be a really long time.
Well, he also 28 days later.
There's so many days and laters and hours. But I don't know. So, like, I as much as I didn't like 9 as much as 10, I still think it's set some things up, which made me appreciate it more in relation to 10. But what are some thoughts anyone had coming out of 9? Whether it's things you actually thought were redeeming about episode 9, or things that you just hated. But what are our 9 thoughts?
Family, baby. At the end of the day, if you can love them and hate them, you can try to leave them, but you're going to be brought back like a magnet, because it's just something in your blood. Even if it's not your true original family in your dimension, you'll be you'll still love them. Wow. That's what I got.
Apologies to anyone listening who hates their family. This is rough truth.
Sorry about that.
No, I agree. I really liked the fact that Rick kind of had this moment of insight, and all I kept thinking was like, oh, cool. So he's having this moment of insight. How are they going to bring him back to his cynical ways? That's what I was thinking. I was like, what's gonna be the thing that causes him to get back to Rick? Right. Otherwise, I don't think you have a show. You don't have the dynamic between him and Morty. So I was like, there's something interesting about like the ebb and the flow, or like you have enlightenment and then you fall, or you have authenticity and then you go back into inauthenticity. So I was like, oh, there's this really sweet moment of sincerity. Cool. That's not going to last long. How are they going to what's going to be the trigger that brings it back? That was what I was thinking as the episode ended.
There was even that moment where I can't remember if it was in 9 or 10, where Morty's like, all right, and what's the undercut? Like, he said something sincere, and then he's like, and I'm waiting for you to undercut it, but you're not. What's going on?
Yeah.
What do we think the crows taught him?
Empathy. There's one line where he says that, where he's like, oh, these crows are like more empathic than us, or empathetic than us. I think it was empathy.
Yeah, was there anything? I get the empathy thing. Was there anything else to the Lord Crow or whatever, when he was like, you do not train, you are trained. When you have not trained, you are trained. Now there is no training, because you are the trainer of the trained.
I mean, is it that somebody was wittier than him? Somebody outwitted him? Like, is that kind of something that was important too? So maybe a dose of humility as well?
Yeah. I mean, it sounded like a sort of like maybe parody of some type of like vague spiritual, the journey is the way type logic.
Yeah.
Well, there's also the funny, they're playing off of like Rick and Morty clearly like broke up, like it's this relationship, and they're kind of having this awkward stage. So the crows were kind of like his new his new rebound woman or whatever you want to call it, and then the second that the Crows dumped him, it's like, all right, well, I got to go back, I got to go back to where I'm comfortable with Morty, right? And I think that they're in a way the Crows kind of taught him, how much he needed Morty, but also how he's using Morty and how toxic the relationship is. So he's clearly he's like, wow, I'm just exploiting Morty only because these Crows aren't taking my advances anymore.
Yeah, I did like how they brought up the bird quaaludes as well, because then it was sort of like that line between are we learning things or are we drug addicts? Are we growing or are we just caught up in chasing the dragon or something like that? So I don't exactly get where that came in, but yeah.
And we did just have the bird person episode. I'm not saying they're related because it was a wheel. The macaroni wheel did choose it for him, but he probably was pretty happy to kind of be in this bird relationship.
I want to whip this back around to talking about the old C word. So if you're playing Rick and Morty bingo and you want to hear me talk about the word capitalism, here we go. Drink.
Well, I would like to push back on you on this. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm going to really focus on this is there are direct references to capitalism.
Wait. Let's say this though. In episode 10, yes, I want to talk about this. In my notes, I have the C word written a bunch. Which C word? You'll never find out. But is there anything else from 9? Because I want to talk about this. I think 9 sets things up really well. I think 9. By the end, we're like, oh, okay, this is what happens when you exploit individuals in your relationships. And now that forms a cycle. I just want to make sure there's nothing else we need to hit from 9 before we jump into this. Because once you get that ball rolling, there's no stopping.
I know. Well, real quick, let me just foreshadow.
Yes,
I want to just say, in what sense do relationships become commodified? Because you can just replace a person with a substitute. And the Crows become a substitute. Now, Rick doesn't realize that he's just trying to do some sort of relationship mathematics here, but that's what he's doing. He's trying to replace one variable with what is supposedly just an equal variable, right? And it's a chance variable too. It's just I can just spin the fucking wheel and it doesn't matter what I plug in because A is equal to B because they're the same quote unquote value, right? For Rick. And that's what I think is set up. And there's a commodity logic of relationships that is explored.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree on that. I do. I think that's
the line.
Yeah.
That's the line.
I think it's a line. I also think that even Rick's lesson of empathy is still an empathy that exists within that fundamental relational dynamic in which, he still doesn't recognize whether it's the Crows or Morty at the end as any type of equal. They're still serving some sort of purpose and being instrumentalized. And we know this throughout the show. Rick has very, very rarely looked at another as his equal, has, for the nerds out there, sought recognition or experienced that in his relation with another. So I agree with that. Do we dive into 10 here? Do we stop talking about Rick and Morty and start talking about Rick and 2 Crows?
And the fucking Citadel. I want to know what the fuck the Citadel is.
Okay. Let's start here then. We get to the end of the episode. We start 10. Rick is now Crow Rick. He's this Ronin-esque figure who seems like he's trying to do something good because he's standing up for his crows. We see Morty come back a couple times and be like, hey, let's be friends again. And Rick kind of turns him away, but in that sense where it's like, I'm no good for you, kid. Stay away because what we have is bad. Morty's a disgusting 40-year-old who's drinking poser drinks like rum and cokes. That is a poser drink, by the way. Don't order a rum and coke at a bar. Make it at a party with your friends. Don't order it at a bar. There's rules to this game.
Or if you do, what's it called, a Cuba Libre?
Cuba Libre, that's the classy version because you got to get the right type of coke and at least you seem interesting, I guess, that way. But by the end of it, we find out that the Crows were playing him all along, thus undercutting this lesson, showing that the Crows, too, were just replacing their sketchy leader with another sketchy leader. I guess the difference is the Crows fuck Crow Scare, and the Crows, I don't think they fuck Rick. And then what does he do? Goes back to the house, gets Morty again, and we start back up. And we enter the Citadel. Ryan, what did you think? Were you at all surprised? I don't think you were, because I think you've called much of this. What did you think when we bounced back to the Citadel?
Well, I was like, I called it, and then there was somebody in the chat earlier that brought up a good point that even Rick said that, hey, do you really want lore? Because it admitted that it was jumping the shark. Ziz K says Rick did say that the lore dump would be jumping the shark. So the second that they kind of said that, and then we're going back to the Citadel, I was like, all right, let's do this. Like they could have just gone back to the Citadel and not made a joke out of it. And I was going, oh shoot, are we jumping the shark? But then they were like, we're going to jump the shark right now. So then I was down for it. That's what was going through my mind at that moment, Michael Burns.
All right. Was there a moment in your mind where you thought that President Morty was not evil Morty?
No, of course not. Yeah.
Because I feel like that's been one of the other big predictions this season that I know you might have mentioned, guests have mentioned, emails have mentioned, the chat has mentioned.
Matt has mentioned.
Everyone's just been like, evil fucking Morty's coming back, y'all.
Well, I want to hear Austin's capitalism take, because then I want to push back on it.
Okay.
Are we to the capitalism part yet?
Well,
I'm sorry.
We're giving Austin. They teed him up. Normally Austin could come in. We could read like a restaurant menu, and Austin might be like, no. The way that capitalism is functioning. And I say that not to make fun of Austin, because Austin's very smart and is able to like analyze stuff in a really fun way. But in this one, they teed him up. I mean, 2 different times. Rick says in the show, it's a metaphor for capitalism. Then another point, he's like, that's a better metaphor for capitalism than my metaphor for capitalism.
Yeah.
Let's just let him do it. Austin, do your Austin thing right now. They set you up. They bring up capitalism. What do you think the show is doing there? How are they using the Citadel? Why was this the metaphor for capitalism episode?
Well, so 2 things. I saw 2 references that I thought were interesting.
Yeah.
One was a real clear Blade Runner reference, I thought. Was that in episode 9 when Rick is killing like the replicants, kind of, but they're like replicants of himself, right?
That's in 10, I think, when Morty downloads Rick's backstory. And there's even a scene where he's like in a Blade Runner-esque universe, like eating noodles or something.
Eating noodles at the and then he's even got the kind of like the Decker outfit on, right? So I was like, okay, so Blade Runner reference, check, and then huge Matrix allusions in the Citadel with like human batteries, and they're even in these little vials that get like filled up. So I was like, okay, and then of course the Citadel is run off of like biopower, like the power of people's biology, and then they're getting whipped and beaten violently so that they can extract more from them. I mean, this is not subtle at all. Like not even in the slightest. This is clearly them making some sort of remark about how capitalism runs. Now, whether or not you agree with that's how capitalism runs or not is a separate debate, but they clearly think that the Citadel is a great sort of analog for capitalism, and it's being run through violence and exploitation. And here's the thing too. Like so many people that like talk about capitalism as being exploitative, they'll stop at the point where it's like, no, they're literally whipping fucking people with violence. And this one is like, oh, actually, this is a better metaphor for capitalism. They're abusing people, So it's like even more intense of a critique and of a depiction of how they think capitalism operates.
Yeah, and of course, a place that Rick created in his own image. Yeah, so Ryan, get him.
Well, okay, it's not really me getting him. I'm just saying.
Take him down.
To me, it's less a critique of capitalism and more a just a critique or even just a joke of a critique of capitalism, where they're using that's what they do the best. They use all this iconography and then do their own fucked up version of it and take it to the ultimate extreme. So. To me, I don't think that this is them saying, yes, this is, the inevitable consequence of capitalism. It's just like, yes, this is a universe where all these, where they're literally exploiting Morty bodies and stuff, which is the ultimate extreme for capitalism. It's a joke is essentially what I'm saying. And I didn't see the Blade Runner illusion as much as, to me, he was talking about the portal gun fluid. I saw like a There Will Be Blood, like all these kind of oil, unobtainium avatar kind of things. It's like the portal gun fluid is a MacGuffin storytelling device. All you got to know is that it's a metaphor for capitalism. That's what we're trying to go for with that. And that's what I thought that all they were saying with the portal gun fluid thing. It was a throwaway joke about how, you know, these MacGuffins stand in for whatever capitalism in academia, and then they moved on. I don't think that there's a full wide critique. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree with you fully if I hadn't seen that frickin' interview with. I'm trying to find if someone in the chat can say who it was. I think he had black hair, and I want to say it was kind of a little bit longer. I can't remember, but he literally said,
Loveness.
"Oh, that's what I was wondering if it was him."
I think because he has like longer hair, kind of a scruffy dude.
Yeah.
He was one of the writers of the finale. It might have been him. Yeah.
It might have been him.
I didn't see that inside the Morty studio episode. I want to go see that.
And he said literally that they were examining Morty as a Zoomer growing up in late stage capitalism, and that's what causes a lot of these difficulties. And he said something like there was a lot of talk about the philosophy in the writer's room about this situation. So for me, if it was just the standalone episode, I could see it as maybe being like a sarcastic kind of wink, wink, kind of like nudge, nudge kind of take. But I think that they were being very kind of intentional about, hey, guess what? We live in a world that is cynical and nihilistic maybe because we're foreclosed from our ability to actually express our hearts because we're not used to people being able to hold our hearts with any sort of delicacy because fucking the system smashes us. So what we do is we just replace people with
This is where I think the central finite curve thing is kind of interesting, right? Because, you know, what is the central finite curve doing? It's limiting the systems of possibility in the universe, but presenting that limited system as this infinity of possibility. And by that I mean, in a sense, it's saying like, this is all there is. You can do whatever you want. We're in this magical multiverse, but really we're in a universe where no matter what, Rick is on top, right? And it does remind me, you know, there's the line, I think, I don't know if he's the first one that said it. The person I always think of as saying is Frederick Jameson, that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism because, like, capitalism is such a dominating force. It's almost like it's easier to imagine the end of the universe than imagining a world where Rick Sanchez isn't the smartest person inside of it. And I feel like the show is exploring that a little bit. And by introducing that limiting fact, it's kind of saying how much of the dynamic between Rick's and Morty's is just determined by other factors, by like I think they say like Rick's weakness and Morty's forgiveness. And then I wonder if it's trying to say, I think this is what we see, if you read 10 back into 9, it's maybe saying like how much has maybe capitalism, maybe not, ruined our ability to like really relate to others, to have good relationships. So in that sense, maybe it's less political and more questioning like what it means to love and care about people.
Ethical. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I love that.
For the way I read the quote from that writer is more just Morty's character because, you know, Morty is, you know, exists now in our present day, essentially. So, and we're in late stage capitalism, you know, yeah, I can see you saying like, all right, like he's a Zoomer going through late stage capitalism. That's how he sees the world. He's a little cynical and whatnot. But in terms of what they were going for with this 9 and 10 episode, you know, like they kind of have all this capitalism iconography throughout the whole series, and to me, that's mainly just because human beings. I think we even talked about on this show before, like, you know, or somebody said it, were like left alone without any government, like human beings will just naturally make a capitalist society, right? You know, it takes all these other things to get out of that. And so to me, when someone says like capitalism causes us to not be able to trust each other as much or something, I don't really even understand what they're saying. It's just like because this is a human phenomenon. I mean, I guess in the sense that because it's a cutthroat society and we're in this rat race and stuff and whatever. But like, what do you like practically saying? Like when you say that, Austin and Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. One, using that phrase, late stage capitalism, is a direct nod to a very particular set of literature that kind of starts with Lenin's idea of like the highest stage of capitalism. And then there's a book called Late Stage Capital or Late Capitalism by Ernest Mandel. And then Frederick Jameson talks about it in his really big book that Michael would be
the postmodern condition,
because I know we've used it in some. Yeah, no, not the postmodern condition, just postmodernism or the cult. Postmodernism or the cultural logic of late capitalism.
Late capitalism, yeah.
And so clearly with these debates and with these ideas and things like that. So I think he's making a nod to like what happens in culture and what happens in society, exactly what Michael was saying, when we're not able to actually engage with each other in a full authenticity because we exchange relations with each other as though they are numbers that can just like be bits that are moved around, right? And that's where I think the lie comes from. It's not a lie in the sense of you know the truth and then you speak the opposite. It's almost like a refusal or an inability to actually kind of see things that might be called deeper truths. And that's the issue. It's more of like an inability, and then there's a frustration that comes from that. But then if you can't actually like scrape beneath and get into the depths, then you're just kind of like trapped at engaging at that level of kind of like the superficial. And that creates all kinds of tensions and problems and things like that. And I think that's kind of what's going on.
It's like a mindset thing, you're saying, then. Like most human beings, I mean, I guess I just don't see how the type of society you're running in, living in, controlling your mind that much, I guess.
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
Yeah. I think maybe like the difference between evil Morty and our Morty gets at this, right? Because like evil Morty, and there's that line at the end where he's like, "Oh, you see that Rick is full of shit, so now you're evil Morty too." This idea, like evil Morty made me think of the sort of like groups in history where you're young and you're like, ooh, those are the bad guys. And you get older and you're like, oh, maybe those weren't the bad guys. Like maybe the ones that like went perceived as being a little fucked up or crazy were doing something good, or at least doing something that had meaning behind it. And I wonder if the point of what evil Morty's doing is saying like, no, here's the lie, and I'm willing to acknowledge it for what it is. And by breaking the central finite curve and going through this new portal, also that sequence was so beautiful at the end. He's like, I'm just going to try to see what's real. I don't think he knows what it is, but he knows what he has thought was possible wasn't all of it. And I think that there's that moment where, Rick gets held under some lumber, and rather than going with evil Morty, who was just going to put him in a toilet seat, he goes back and helps Rick, thus kind of saying, no, this is what's real. This relationship that I have with Rick, that's what's real. Where evil Morty is like, no, I've already shown you. This is all built upon a lie. So I think it's like this fundamental lie, almost like the original sin or something of these relationships, like the foundational lie or something like that.
Got it.
Yeah,
but I don't even know if the show knows what it's doing in that sense, to be 100% honest. I think that writer
it's asking questions.
Yeah,
no, I think that's right. It's asking questions. It's kind of saying like, okay, so how we sense something and we feel something, and how can we kind of like explore that? But we don't really know, because then it's going to come back in season 6, and of course, you're not going to have like this enlightened show where there's no conflict and everyone is just like, oh, cool, we have achieved the real, and we now understand how to relate with people, because you can't have storytelling without conflict, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think they definitely took some real big swings. I think they have a lot of people writing for this show now that are trying to maybe like push what they're doing a little bit more, because I think the thing I loved so much, and I think the thing we all love, those of us who are here right now, people are in the chat, people listening to this later, most people agree that seasons 1 through 3 are just awesome. And the reason they're awesome is because they're dark and they're funny, but they explore a certain logic of nihilism underneath everything else.
Yeah.
And it's something that like connected to a lot of people. And it wasn't trying to say, here is how you respond to that nihilism. It wasn't saying, here's the system that creates that. It was a little more like, hey, fucko, this is what the world is like. Let's at least acknowledge it for what it is and have some fun with it. I think back, I've been rewatching season 1, and I think Rick Potion number 9, when he explains what love is, it's a chemical reaction in the brain, free yourself from that Morty, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's, in my mind, like classic early Rick and Morty, just like taking a thing that we view as this magical, emotional human thing, and it's like, nah, dog, it's just like some science, chill out. And I think now the show's kind of going back a little bit more, because season 1, it's like love is a chemical reaction. And now it's like, human relationships are this important thing that transcend our scientific minds or whatever. So I'm very
It makes
curious
my
to see where they go
romantic
from there.
heart flutter with poetic thoughts and ideals.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, but I don't know. I think, like, at the end of the season, it leaves one with a lot of, what the fuck are they going to do now? There's part of me that would love for season 6 to start with evil Morty on the other side of the central finite curve and an entire new multiverse. I mean, I think we'll see him again. We'll come back to this again, but I don't think it's going to be for a while.
Yeah, what do you think? What's next? Like, where does the show go, Ryan? Like, you are the predictor of predictors for all things Rick and Morty. So, what when it ended, what did your mind initially go? This is where it's going?
And if you do bet money, write down what Ryan says. Go to Vegas, put money on whatever his prediction is, because Vegas now has Rick and Morty lines. You're going to be rich. Okay, so write this down. Go ahead, Ryan.
All right. I think that next season we're going to just start off, and it's going to be a just hilarious episode of Rick and Morty with no mention of any of this shit.
100%.
Maybe one line to kind of be like, huh.
But then they'll undercut it immediately. If they reference anything that happened, it'll be immediately undercut.
Exactly. That's what I think. Take that to the bank.
Yeah. But I think it's telling that they've already, the next 2 seasons are written. They're done. So they know this arc for 2 more seasons.
Wow.
So I don't know. I think we're not going to get any of this in 6, if at all. Maybe in 7. But I don't know. They're not going to stick with this.
Is 7 slated to be the final one?
No, they got. I forget the exact number. Adult Swim was like, here, make 1 million episodes. I mean, I think season 5 was or maybe 4 was the first set of episodes in like a 74 episode contract.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we're Rick and Morty forever, baby. I wanted to read this, and we could read this, share any last thoughts, get into the mailbag. But we talked about this before. You get to the end of the episode, you have this beautiful sequence of evil Morty going through the central finite curve, credits roll, and then we're with Mr. Poopy Butthole. And he just watched the episode with us. That's always fun. I want to do what he does. But I want to read a little bit of what he says at the end. So we kind of like gets into, he's reading it, and the camera pans out, and we're like, oh, some things have like happened in his life. But he talks about hanging out with Rick, and he says this, he says, but I guess things went downhill from there. Started isolating myself from Amy. Used to tell her everything I was feeling, but then I guess I stopped because I wanted her to love who she thought I was, who I felt myself becoming. Ever think about how horrified the people we love would be if they found out who we truly are? So we just dig ourselves deeper into our lies every day, ultimately hurting the only people brave enough to love us. Wish I didn't do that. Wish I was brave enough to love them back. I don't know. Maybe you should try it. We don't have as much time as we think. We never do. Ooh-wee. Or the final. So that's the final words we got in season 5. It was a lot. It was a real lot right there that they dropped on us at the very end. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that. I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but I would do us a disservice if we didn't at least mention the Poopy Butthole epilogue.
Well, I love the sentiment that Mr. Poopy Butthole is projecting here. I will say I would love to talk to Mr. Poopy Butthole about what exactly practically he means. We kind of touched on it earlier in this episode. Does he mean radical honesty with his loved ones, or not lying to oneself? And I would even argue, because I'm somebody who, I keep it real. Like, I like to tell people where I'm at, thinking, mind-wise. But also there's a argument to be made that there is a limit to how much you should do of that. Okay, you can be too honest with people is kind of what I'm saying, to the point where you're annoying to be around. So I would say, how far does Mr. Poopy Butthole go when he's talking about this? Does it just mean in general? Because in general, I 100% agree with him. Practically, like in practice, like, I think that they're, it's human relationships are weird, man. You gotta,
let's do the hashtag Mr. Poopy Butthole challenge. where you have to be brutally, radically honest to everyone you care about in your life this week, and then email us and let us know how it goes. And we
tell
have
us how
no
that
responsibility if your life falls apart.
Well, I think there's a difference too between brutally radically honest with what we think we're feeling and truly being open from the true desires of our heart. So like I've been doing a lot of like I've done, been in therapy for a little bit, and one of the things that like I've realized is that like not to get like too fucking serious for people here, but this is actually good, I think, to talk about. Like the initial trauma, let's say, that oftentimes becomes repeated in my mind is the need for acceptance, right? The need to just be simply accepted or seen or loved or affirmed. And so when I feel like I'm not being seen or loved or accepted, then oftentimes I can respond in certain ways that I think are truthful. But if I deliver that response to somebody, it's not as honest by just saying to the person sometimes like, fuck, I just don't feel loved, or I just don't feel seen right now. And there's a distinction between expressing this I need, like maybe like there's a shadow of me that's like a little boy that's his hands in the air like, Dad, why didn't you fucking accept me? Because I got some daddy issues, right? So it's like that kind of shit, right? So that's like one of the things that I can return to like constantly that can become pathologized, and I could wield some sort of symptomatic response to that, and I could be like mean in how I respond, like, oh, you're not doing this, or you're treating me like this, or you're doing that. But that just comes from like an accusational point of fear, rather than accepting like, fuck, you know what? I feel like I'm not getting something, and I'm scared because I feel like I'm not being loved right now, or something like that. And to me, that's more of like an authentic and open honesty. That's the type of honesty that I think that we're getting in the epilogue. If we can express that, that's the truth that we can express, not the you're doing this, you're doing that, you're not giving me this, you're not giving me that. That's accusatory, and that's still second level. That's still a symptomatic response to the truth that's deeper.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important in Poopy Butthole's thing that he's alone, right? When we see him, he's alone in this shitty little place. He says, that he isolated himself from Amy. So I think there is that interesting thing too with like the type of, I guess, the lack of truth and honesty that builds a little wall around you and makes it harder for people to get in, that sense where like, it's like you ask someone if they're doing okay, and they say, yeah, fine, whatever. And there's something going on, but if they don't say anything, there's only so much you could do. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, to get into the show a little bit, like there's only so much you can do if Rick's never going to admit everything that he's been through and what's motivated a lot of his actions. There's only so much you can do if Morty's not going to acknowledge that he feels so bad about himself, he's willing to get treated like a piece of shit by his grandpa just because it makes him feel accepted. Until there's some honesty about that, or some honesty about what they really want, they're in trouble. And in a weird way, I will say this, maybe this is the last thought I have on the 2 episodes, is very interesting episodes, even though they're barely in it, for Beth and Jerry, who we learn probably are only together because of some cosmic sort of force, and yet have figured out how to make it work within that by being kind of honest with each other about like who they are. And I don't know, I learning that made me see their relationship differently. And I was like, oh, they're like some of the only people that are, to an extent, they got forced together, but truly love each other within all of this because they've been honest to an extent, even in Jerry's goofiness. But I don't know.
Maybe there's a freedom in accepting your fate. This is that amor fati thing that you get with Nietzsche, the love of fate. If you can affirm that and you can accept that, then maybe that's a real sort of pathway into actually finding an authentic freedom, even within the deterministic universe.
Yeah. Or the cynical view of that is that Rick probably just forced him to do it. There's some chemical he implanted, and we saw him direct them to each other a couple times. So it's all just Rick's doing, and we're just his little pawns, and his little puppets in his scheme.
Yes.
Well, everyone's been listening to us share our opinions on what's been the finale of a wild season. We would love to hear yours. Now, you might be thinking, Michael, you dumb piece of shit. This is the last episode, surely. Why would we email or call? But then I say to you, no, we're coming back next week. We're doing a season recap episode. We're going to be here one more time. We want you to help us sort of figure out what we think about the season as a whole. And you can do that by shooting us an email at squanch@wisecrack.co. That's squanch@wisecrack.co. Or calling us at 213-534-8807, 213-534-8807. So we got a couple friends who they watched the finale and they got the fingers typing and they let us know what they thought. So we'll just read a couple emails now. I'm sure we'll get a lot more for next week. This one's from Walter. Said, howdy, Squanchers. Wanted to write in about the 2-part finale of Rick and Morty, specifically the second half. Is it just me, or did this episode feel designed to wrap up every lingering thread at once so that the show doesn't have to keep referring to them again? I would not be surprised if we never see Evil Morty again. We saw Rick's tragic canon backstory, got Evil Morty, learned about the central finite curve, then broke it, and learned about the Citadel all in one 20-minute burst. This felt like the writers of the show cleaning house before going back to a full episodic structure. The breaking of the central finite curve could refer to breaking or removing any kind of limitation to any kind of story the writers want to tell. It is a blank check of infinite possibility and no more canon. Thanks for the content. Excited to hear y'all talk about this crazy finale. And please share my disappointment with the lack of Time God Jessica. As we all know, we wanted to see Time God Jessica back maybe in the future. So what do y'all think about Walter's read on what they were doing in episode 10, just kind of clearing the decks?
I love that. We kind of touched on this before. You know, as he was saying that though, like I would love to see, you know, there is kind of a can of worms that's open in the sense that if they all break through the curve or whatever, then we will get to see people that are more smarter than Rick. We will get to see Rick meet his match a million times over. So that would be kind of interesting if they did continue a little bit, but I also can see it his way too.
I mean, I think we're going to have to see Evil Morty again, because he doesn't die or something like that. Like I like what Michael said, that we might just start with him in some sort of like other dimensional, you know, multiversal space, right? Or something like that. So I think and I also love what Ryan was saying about how the next season's probably just going to start off like nothing fucking happened in this last episode, you know? So it is kind of a clearing the space, but it's also like we're never going to forget what happened, right? And I mean, even in episode 10, there's a little pop-up where it's like, go back to season 1, episode 9 and watch it or whatever, right? So it's like there's always going to be some point, season 7, season 8, where we're going to get a reference to it. Or like you said, it's going to be a slight reference and then it's going to undercut it. So it's a nice wrap up, but it's also kind of like leaving a little specter to kind of haunt us as we move forward.
Well, you know, I think like the best episode, I mean, the best sweet spot for Rick and Morty is episodes where you can watch the episode in an isolated sense and it's still awesome, but be rewarded if you've been paying attention throughout. So maybe they'll still do that with it. Got one more email. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say that you had mentioned Jerry, and there was that moment where he literally gets like vaporized like in 1 second, and then it's seemingly Morty has no reaction. It's just kind of like, well, he just watched his father get. I would thought my dad would be dead if I saw that, but maybe he's like, all right, I know he's gonna be okay.
I mean, yeah, most good sons, your dad stubs his toe or like chips his tooth opening a bottle of beer, and you're like, Dad, are you okay? To be clear, my dad could never do the beer thing. It's the masculine figure I wished my dad was. I can imagine Ryan having a father or a cool uncle that could open beer with his teeth, and I'm gonna leave that fantasy in my head. So we got another email from Jonathan. Jonathan said this: I enjoyed the season's finale episode immensely. It wasn't the funniest or best episode, but I feel it provided a satisfying revolution to Evil Morty's story. I would certainly welcome some continuation of that story after he escaped the central finite curve, or filling in some more of the backstory in a standalone episode, but I don't feel like I'd be missing out on anything if this was it for the character. By the way, I really like how they used the idea of the central finite curve in this episode after it was just so offhandedly mentioned in season 3 Citadel episode in the commercial for Simple Ricks. Did not catch that and make that connection, so thank you for pointing that out to us, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I don't believe they had this all planned out so clearly from the start, but it just came together over time as the series progressed. Setting aside the evil actions he undertakes towards achieving his goals, I appreciate that Evil Morty isn't from an evil dimension or anything, that he's sick of all the Ricks and their baggage. After viewing the entirety of the season, I can honestly say that it was a mixed bag on the whole. It had some of the weakest episodes of the series so far. He's had Rick Dependence Spray, and some of the strongest, Mortyplicity. However, I'm still just as excited ever for future seasons of the series. Ultimately, I think my problem with certain episodes have to do with time. Certain scripts, like Rick Dependence, feel like they were rough drafts that need additional work or tune-up. He said Gotron, Jerry says Rick Mangelian had a similar feel. And then he says, I have a feeling this will be the status quo going forward. I prefer experimenting with different ideas. This means some bad episodes, but also some great ones. So thanks, Jonathan, for that. Yeah, I totally forgot and don't have any memory of the fact that they referenced Central Finite Curve in season 3. So thank God for Jonathan's in this world to know the things that we don't.
Yeah. And I agree also about like just the inconsistency of the episodes this season. I felt that pretty heavy. Yeah. And like I thought some of the episodes were just kind of meh, and then some I thought were fucking great. So I mean, I guess that's going to happen. Not every episode can be a home run, but I guess I would wonder what are your overall grades for the whole season?
We gotta save that for the next episode, Austin. We have to do a whole season recap. This is
okay.
You can't get okay. We have to create a reason for people to come back. We say that right now.
Right.
Everyone says, "Why would I listen to that?"
We do want to hear yours, though.
I apologize.
Austin.
Yeah, you can give us yours though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give it a solid B, Yeah. Because some of the episodes I thought were like outstanding, and then some were just, they were just average. So I'm gonna give it a B. Yeah.
Wow.
But that's a B within like the Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Canon, right? Like it's still a B of Rick and Morty is like fucking better than 90% of the junk that's out there. So
a B is good. A B is good.
Yeah. I mean, a B of this is better than an A of Emily in Paris. So there you go.
Now, I just had an audition for that a few weeks back. So now let's just be careful with what we're talking about here.
Well, it'll be you weren't in it before, so I can say whatever I want. If you're
I'm not associated with that slight. God damn it, casting directors, I'm still available. I'm in lockdown right now, but if you need me to come to Paris,
guys, Australian actors, especially Australian American hybrid actors, are a lot to deal with. Mel Gibson, anyone? You're like the reverse Mel Gibson because you went from America to Australia.
There's so many
also, I said
actors
reverse, so you're also not an anti-Semite. So that's good too.
Okay.
But if you want to know our grades, Ryan and myself, you got to come back to the next episode where we will have controversial guest of the show, TV writer Billy Domino, who from the feedback we get, people either love him or hate him. They got mad at him last time.
I love him.
Yeah, he said that the season was he wouldn't even grade the episode he was on last. Said it was incomplete. But come for that, and whether you love him or hate him, Billy's great because he is a very fun and experienced TV writer and gives a really cool analysis of these episodes from like he is to breaking down story structure what Austin is to finding the mechanisms of capitalism and all your favorite art and culture. So definitely come for that. In the meantime, let's talk social media. You probably, if you're listening to this, you know where to find people. Ryan, I just want to start with you because I had so much fun. You posted this thing the other night. I don't know if it was new or not, the somebody thinks you're cool video thing.
Somebody sent that to me.
Oh my God. I was obsessed with this weekend.
Somebody sent it to me today.
No way.
Oh.
I was like, oh.
It has been in my head constantly. I was playing it on my phone, and someone was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "It's Ryan." And it's so like people use that term like earworm, but truly been thinking about that constantly. I saw it on your Instagram. I don't know if you posted other places as well, but people should definitely watch that. But where can they find all these great things that you make, Ryan?
Well, it's because somebody thinks you're cool.
Yeah.
Burns. You too, Austin. Well, thanks, y'all, for that. Yeah, find me on Ryan Shorts on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. Ryan's Game Show on Twitter. I feel like I wasn't that articulate this podcast, but hey, whatever. I catch me at the recap one. But I had a great time this series with you, Mike Burns, and guests, and you, Austin, for this episode and other episode that you were on. This has been a fun one.
Oh, Ryan, so sweet, and thank you so much. You're the one of the last man standing from the original crew. So thank you for welcoming us into this world and letting us be real squanchers with you. Yeah, Austin, where can people find you besides on the set of season 2, Emily in Paris, playing like some bad boy that tries to lure Emily away from the
play a mime guy?
Fuck.
The hot mime that Emily fucks in season 2.
Jesus.
It'll be like how in Fleabag everyone talked about the hot priest, and now it'll be the hot mime phenomenon.
Fuck. Well, hey, from your lips to God's ears, let's make it happen. You can find me on Twitter, Austin_Hayden, Insta, AUS_HAY. And then, of course, I also host with Ryan the Wisecrack Show Me the Meaning podcast, where we're coming at you every week talking about movies. This week, we're talking about Snowpiercer. We've got a huge back catalog. We've been doing this for like 4 freaking years, Ryan. Did you know that? Like,
I hadn't realized. No.
What if Rick and Morty at one point in the last season incorporated Snowpiercer into a thematic for an episode? That'd be crazy.
I'm here for it. I'm totally here for it. So yeah, come check that madness out.
Oh, now that we're doing this, also listen to Culture Binge on Wisecrack, another podcast we do. Listen to all the podcasts, and if you want to, you can sign up for the Patreon. I can tell you this: currently, if you sign up for Wisecrack's Patreon, you get fun stuff like we have some extra hangouts, some research stuff. There's a fun Discord server, and you don't have to watch ads. But we are working on new Patreon things now, so I will say check out Wisecrack's Patreon if you want. If you want to find me, it's Michael O. Burns. On Twitter, on Instagram, it's the same thing, but underscores on either side of the O. But this has been so much fun this season. I'm very excited. We'll be back next week with our bud Billy. We will break down the whole season before you get final grades. In the meantime, thank you so much, Austin, for being here. Really loved it. Last word to Ryan. See you next time.
We'll see you tomorrow, Austin, on Show Me the Meaning. And
Wubba-lubba-dub-dub! This has been a good season from Hollywood, California. This has been the Squanch.